It is my absolute great honor to introduce one of the heroes of the great struggle for the liberation of the Russian Jewry, who actually brought down the Iron Curtain and allowed millions of Jews to escape the slavery of communism and embrace freedom. And of course, first of all, spiritual freedom in the land of Israel, and actually physical freedom in many new places in diaspora. So a refusenik and prisoner of Zion, person who fought for Russian Jewry, Ephraim Kholmyansky. It's my honor to introduce you to our community, Ephraim.
Thank you very much. A couple of words I wanted to share with you. When we think generally about the saga of Soviet Jewry, primarily only famous names are recalled, like Sharansky, Mendelevich, Nudel, Begun. It would be much more interesting to embrace the entire movement. It was much more than individual names, with all the importance of their contribution. So when I joined the Jewish national movement in the late 70s, I saw many people involved in different kinds of activities. The one that interested me most was the Hebrew education. It's a fascinating story how Hebrew made its leap from Israel to Moscow. That's not for the next time. Now we started to learn. I started to learn Hebrew. And in a year's time, I became a Hebrew teacher, an official Hebrew teacher in Moscow. It was very important role, and there was some danger associated with that. But very quickly, I realized that all we have there at that time was contained to two main cities in the USSR, Moscow and Leningrad, St. Petersburg now, while the bulk of the Jewish population is spread across the giant country in tens of different cities. Among them, the famous names like Odessa, Kiev, Minsk, Kishinev. And there is a spiritual void there. There is no Jewish activity whatsoever. And not by chance, the KGB, the dreadful secret Soviet police, the Jewish department of the KGB, definitely prevented it and tried to prevent it. It will never allow the Jewish national activity to spread to the other places. So to initiate a project that would replicate the Jewish activity to those distant places would be very dangerous. And I couldn't make up my mind for a couple of months because of these dangers. Because who are we basically? Handful of Jewish activists. Who is our foe, let's say? It's enormous machinery of the KGB, unlimited in terms of financial resources, technological, human resources. What are the chances to create a project like that? The chances are bleak. So I decided still to make a move up, initiate such a story, not because we calculated the chances for a success against chances of failure. As I mentioned, the chances were bleak. Could we afford not to do it? It was sort of a moral obligation, imperative to do such a thing and try at least to least degree to prevent the total annihilation of the Jewry in the distant places. We started with a small team of 4 people, my elder brother, Mikhail, late Yulia Kosharovsky, and now famous Yulia Edelstein. The small team that initiated this giant project. And it was an enormous blessing. I saw many things in my lifetime where the difference with the lack of blessing and existence of blessing was evident. So it was a blessing. Somehow we found the right people at right places. So we managed to develop special educational techniques, very intensive, very efficient. We managed to replicate part of the activities to some cities and continued with the full steam further and further. Generally, the activities the KGB wouldn't like to exist could not exist. And our project, because we did it as a full-scale underground project, meaning it's supposed to be not known to the KGB, existed for years. We started actually in 1980s, in spring of 1980s, and in the course of my tenure, say four years before my arrest, we managed to create stable groups in 20 different cities, trying in vain in tens of others. In terms of logistics, without speaking of dangers, it was an enormously complicated project. I believe it was the biggest underground Soviet project undertaken by the Soviet Jewry since the World War II. I don't know what was before. And you definitely ask where the KGB is. The KGB gradually started to trace the major underground activity. We still think till this very day that they couldn't realize the whole entire scope of the project. Otherwise, there would be much more arrests. But even that, what was evident for them, justified the pressure on myself. And my name was more and more appeared during the interrogation of the others already by 1984, saying that number one in the line for arrest, there will be a show trial. Show trial is a term from the time of Stalin, when they indeed made a show of the trial in the negative sense of the word. The victim was demonstrated to the audience, was a media coverage at that time, or more newspapers, in our time more TV and radio, with the victim getting a harsh punishment, maybe capital punishment. The verdict announced instead, as a way to intimidate the public. By that time, I prepared two people, my closest associates, and I blessed them to continue my job, split it between the two of them in case something happens to me. It was spring 1984, Pesach, Passover. And indeed, I was arrested several months later in July 1984. My initial charge was a light one. I was arrested with my students of summer camp in the region of the Baltic Sea in now what's called now Estonia. I was brought to the capital of Estonia, Tallinn. It was a big prison there. And for the first month, I was kept in a small cell with two inmates. They were all the time interrogated. I'm virtually not. But in a month's time, one of the days that I recall perfectly till today, the door of our cell opened. The lady guard standing in front of us with a small note, twisting the note. And I'm looking at my mates who will be called, but she says, Kholmyansky to the interrogator. I told him maybe it's a mistake. My interrogator is not in Tallinn, he's somewhere else in Estonia. No, she said, it's you. And we went downstairs to the basement of the interrogations. There, a peculiar person is waiting for me, pacing back and forth, middle-aged person with a special penetrating gaze, cold, sharp. He introduced himself Colonel Chikarenko, and this my teammate, Major. We're a special team for major crimes, just arrived from Moscow. And I realized that something big story is unfolding. The important message to you, tells me Chikarenko, there was a house search in the apartment in Moscow, and during the search, the handgun and ammunition was found under your bookshelf. Please tell us who gave you these items, what was the purpose of the stockpiling under the bookshelf. How did you mean to use them? And I realized that this big story started. That's exactly what they needed for a show trial. To depict us as criminals that under the guise of the cultural activity, Hebrew, Jewish history, Jewish religion, are criminals, terrorists, stockpiling weapons. Definitely have to be isolated from the population of the USSR. I'm brought to my cell and feel acute feeling of a victim. They want to turn me into a victim, and in such a way to turn upside down everything we build, to destroy it, to intimidate everybody. Everybody in the cities project knew me or knew about me, and even the entire Jewish national movement, everybody knew about me or me personally. What? No, I cannot. I simply cannot, physically cannot be a victim. It's not my role. But what could be done? The only weapon, theoretically, the prisoner could have, it's a hunger strike, if it's a weapon. And I declare an open-end hunger strike. Next day, I am taken to the deputy warden, and he says, you guys do not understand the political realities. You do not read the political map correctly. He meant the leader of the KGB, Andropov, was nominated as a leader of the ruling Communist Party. He lasted altogether only 10 months in that capacity and died, but already introduced some changes. So the deputy warden continues. A simple example, the new ordinance entered into force, declaring that the person who refused to eat the hunger strike is regarded as a gross violation of internal prison rules. It's like you attacked the prison guard, but unlike the one who attacked the prison guard, you will be kept in the punishment cell indefinitely. He will be up till 15 days, but you will get out only in 2 cases: if you stop the hunger strike or die. You have the time till tomorrow morning to come down. And the next morning, I'm in the punishment cell, a famous, notorious punishment cell, something, it's not outright torture, but the closest degree they have there. It's small place, 2.5 meters by 2 meters. All you have to stroll is 2 steps in one direction. Something that meant to be a bed, we prisoners call it a cot. It's locked onto the wall most of the day, so the prisoner in the punishment cell can use it only from 11 at night till 5 in the morning. And during the hunger strike, that's exactly what's needed. Some rest. No signs of the bedding, already cold. And nothing to sit, Just imagine without the hunger strike, without the punishment cell, without any threats of the show trial, just nothing to sit from the morning till late at night, every day. So the conditions are so harsh in the punishment cell, so they expect me to break down very quickly. That's I realized immediately. So these are critical days. Try your best. And I tried my best. There is a fight. Try your best. And my feeling is that every single hour I add to my hunger strike, it's a blow to the enemy. Day after day, day after day. That's already 15th day of the hunger strike. I'm brought to the officer who says that they will start now, according to the law, the force feeding. They insert a tube. I will not go into details. They are appalling. It's a difficult procedure, and they started to do it every day. I was still getting weaker and weaker. Sometimes I felt I cannot continue, and each time something happened, like a new invitation to the warden or deputy warden that asked me, tried to convince me to stop the hunger strike. Their interest in my health was funny, ridiculous. And each time I felt another impulse that there was something is going on. I recall vividly my internal dialogue. I'm telling myself I cannot continue anymore. And I'm replying to myself, yes, you did it perfectly. It was impressive. You continued for a long time. Could you please endure 1 hour? Just 1 hour, and then another hour, and another hour. From time to time, Colonel Chikarenko appeared again with the same set of questions: who gave you the weapon, what you intended to do with that, and got the same set of answers. It's a fabricated case. You planted the weapon. You have to be in prison, not me. I started the hunger strike on 13th of September. We are already somewhere late in November. And again, Chikarenko appeared, and this time he looked different. Something different air about him. So 2 tests were undertaken. First, so-called ballistic test, checking if the pistol in the working order. It was, he said, but the experts could not determine under which circumstances it was used. And I'm translating to myself. You want to see that somebody was murdered, and you want to indict me? Murder? Something in his voice told me no. And another message, he says, the second test was to determine the quality of the fingerprints on the pistol. There was no fingerprints of the sufficient quality to identify the person. What? Please say it again. You didn't forge my fingerprints? So your entire plan is falling apart. You cannot implement what you meant to do. What does that mean? The new forces entered the arena of the struggle. A divine intervention, the political struggle, solidarity campaign in the West, everything of them taken together. But I realized that it was a turning point. We started to win. There was still a very long and complicated continuation of the hunger strike. The dry hunger strike KGB is not the agency that would give in quickly. I don't mean to tell you the entire story now and today. It's impossible. It's just the introduction. The one who knows is interested to know more, I address him to my book. This is the story which is written in full details. Whoever is interested is welcome to purchase. And I believe there would be a link after our video for you to make this move easier. Thank you very much.
I want to congratulate you, Ephraim, with translation and actually publication of your book from Russian and Hebrew to English finally, in our English-speaking and reading community can enjoy and be inspired by your book. Can you please show us the book? We want to see the book, The Voice of Silence. And I want to ask you like a few brief questions. First of all, it says the story, wait a second, let's read it together. It states on the book, if you don't mind bringing it back, it says the story of the Jewish underground in the USSR by Ephraim or Alexander Kholmyansky. So my question for you, The Voice of Silence. Why did you choose this title, The Voice of Silence?
You know, we wanted the Soviet Jewry to have its voice. We wanted to say to the world that the underground project produces results. The results are voice. Our joint effort produced the outcome, the grand exodus of the Soviet Jewry. All that is measured by voice. You know, in Jewish perception, the voice, the prayer, the communication is of utmost importance. So this is the voice, this is our voice. The voice should be strong, clear, and to convey the message.
Actually, Ephraim, our Jewish tradition, our rabbis teach us that the essence of slavery is silence of a slave. Therefore, the very holiday of freedom is called Pesach. And the rabbis see a hint. Pe, mouth, sicha means speaks. It is the mouth that shares the story of freedom. It's also another way, purity of speech, because when we control our own speech and we share inspiration and positivity and hope. But at the same time, I want to ask you a question, because our audience today, mainly young people, maybe their parents or even grandparents, immigrated to United States or other English-speaking countries like Canada, Australia, and they came very much because of your efforts, because of your self-sacrifice, because of your courage to confront the KGB, overcoming fear. But nevertheless, for many of those people, your story is unknown still, and I'm so happy that now they can get the book and read it. But at the same time, to encourage and inspire them to read, I want to ask you, what will they benefit? Why this book is relevant today to their lives in 2022?
The question is a multifaceted one. It's complicated, really, but we are looking for plausible answers. One is that it's important not to be a passive victim. Not to be a victim of KGB, it's not relevant, but of the circumstances, it's relevant. Because not to drift away from something real. Sometimes it's important, and we demonstrated it, it's important to come up to the challenge, to see the challenge, not to be afraid, not to make cold calculations of probability of the victory, because there is a moral imperative and it overrides all other considerations. That's one story. The second part of the story is the Jewish unity. You know, without the help from the Western Jewry and the non-Jews who helped, it couldn't have happened. You know, behind those thick walls, you understand that something is taking place, and you are feeling that they under pressure. It's so powerful, so important. Don't waste on squabble. Keep concentrating on what unites us. That's what we see from the experience of so many years and so hardships. Another thing that one of the slogans that we saw during the rallies of that time for the benefit of the Soviet Jewry was "I'm my brother keeper." We in Israel still need your help. You yourself need our help. We both need each other's help. Because in political level, Israel needs help. The anti-Semitism is growing in the West. You need the help of big communities taken together. Us, we see several countries, they try to rewrite the history, especially Holocaust, Poland, Lithuania, and the others. Somebody have to tell them it's not accepted, it's not acceptable. So far, we see only Israel in this arena. It's not enough. And my last idea is that this is the important pedagogical, educational tool to invigorate the Jewish identity. You know, we need a positive story, because so much considerable part of the Jewish identity education that I saw, at least from here, from Israel, is based on Holocaust education. That's important. It have to be known, but that's only the part of the story. That's a negative part of the story. We need to add the positive part of the story. We need to demonstrate that we can withstand and we can win. And indeed, we won. Again, let's imagine a handful of people vis-a-vis enormous machinery, the dreadful machinery. Incredible what happened. It's a real miracle. And we do believe it contributed to opening the gates of the Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain, and all those things. So there are very real messages that are truly relevant. Don't forget them. Don't be passive. Don't drift.
I would say don't be silent. Don't allow your voice not to be heard. In other words, make sure that your voice is actually heard, and that's how your book is called, right? The voice of silence. In other words, the silence or silenced people who were silenced by the KGB or maybe their inner fears should learn how to express themselves courageously, freely, and that is, I believe, the most important message that anybody can take from your story of struggle that is in this book, right? Therefore, reading the book may inspire people to be free and outspoken wherever they are, and defending Israel or whatever they believe in. It is an amazingly important message. But I wanted to ask you, Ephraim, many people who were heroes back in the Soviet Union, when they face the challenges of a new life, living in a new country, And this new country was Israel, or is Israel. For some people, it was Israel because they couldn't manage, so to speak, being a hero in Russia and being a regular Israeli. So some people, as you know, maybe some people spiritually fell apart. Some people just moved to other exiles. So I wanted to ask you, how's your life in Israel? Where do you live? What do you do? How you continue to be so inspirational, helping other people to connect to their Jewish future through their Jewish past?
You know, nothing special about me living in Israel. You know, it started when the next day when we made the Aliyah, I was taken to the primetime news. The anchor asked, you fought courageously for this country for so long. Now your dream came true. What's next? How will you continue to live? What happens to a person whose dream came true? The reality is different. It couldn't be ideal. And it's a very profound question, a very tricky one. Indeed, we need to keep the dream somewhere in the concealed place. And the day-to-day problems shall not influence it. You know, I lost my profession. I lost a good part of my health. I lost my profession. So I didn't know what to do with myself. Really. I started to write a book. It was very difficult. I started to read in Hebrew. And then I saw what I wrote, I threw it away. Then I started to write in Russian. When I saw what I did, I threw it away. So it was many attempts until we came up with a readable text. And took enormous amount of time, writing and editing and throwing it away and writing again. Then I was invited to the ministry. It was the time of Big Aliyah. I was invited to the Ministry of Education. Was a newcomer, Ole Hadash, pedagogical director of Ulpan for the newcomers. It was funny. I was manager of Israeli Hebrew teachers that couldn't comprehend how it possible for Ole Hadash. Then it was the time when scientists from the USSR started to come, and the group asked me to help them to implement their ideas. I don't have sufficient knowledge. Instead of learning, I worked for the Soviet Jewry. So when it comes to professional knowledge, it bites. I started still to help them one way or another. Got carried away by this story. It was this time for startups emerged in Israel. I started to help to get involved. Most of these startups failed. Something more or less I was more successful. I'm still now in one of these startups trying to push it further. At a certain stage, I wanted to translate my book into Hebrew. It was important to demonstrate that we had a real sufficient command of the Hebrew, just more than an ordinary teacher. I want to demonstrate it. And it was not much sense to translate it in English, but I didn't find anybody who agreed to do it. So I translated myself. It was enormous job to make to bring my translation into the real English-speaking world, to optimize it for the American reader. I was invited to work for the Jewish agency. I worked for 1 year. They wanted me 3 years. I only could allow 1 year. I worked for 7 years for the Israeli company searching for oil You would be surprised to know that there is oil in Israel, not produced commercially, but still they managed to find and produce a certain scale. I divided my time between startups and books and writing different other books. I'm invited to deliver lectures on this subject, what I told you now. I'm invited to the different Israeli frameworks. I was invited to many countries to tell this story, starting from Europe all the way to Australia and New Zealand. Raised a family, kids, granddaughters. I'm a happy person. I'm a happy person. I didn't expect, I expect nothing here in Israel. I didn't expect anybody to give me, you know, special places or special owners or whatever. I wanted to find my place in Israeli community and to contribute. I think I still can contribute in education. So I'm divided into split between both worlds, technology, startups, and education. That's myself.
Wonderful. And maybe last question, which should be a message to all of us living here in New York or living elsewhere. You came to Israel over 30 years ago. And how do you feel there? Do you feel at home?
Absolutely.
Do you feel yourself in the right place? And when you go back to Moscow, when you go back to any, you know, Russian-speaking or English-speaking country, like, do you think about living elsewhere?
And never.
And what is your message to us? Because there are many people, actually one of our students just a few minutes ago before we began our class, has a very good job here in New York City. And nevertheless, she said to me, you know, I'm really thinking about moving to Israel. As a matter of fact, a few minutes before, I spoke to another student who said, I feel so good in Israel that I really want to fulfill my dream. I want to move there. So I see young Russian-speaking people, not only Russian-speaking people, young Jews living here in New York are really seriously thinking about making Aliyah. What do you say to them?
I'm happy. I'm happy. You know, with all big diaspora, to the best of my understanding, Moses brought the Jewish people from Egypt, not to New York and not to London, but to this special, sacred, holy land. There's something special about this place. There is, we're close. We are close there to the divinity, to the blessings. There is a special energy. There is a mission to be there. My American friends, in my understanding, are all coming. Somebody is already coming. Somebody will be coming later. But I perceive them all sort of a people on the way to us, to themselves. They will discover what's they lacking. It's not simple here. It's not simple. It's difficult to live in a small country surrounded by not very friendly others. But be part of a mission. It's a mission. Thank you.
You know what, maybe last question that we can learn from your lessons. If you remember from, you know, the very beginning, early 70s, there were arguments and discussions among the Jewish activists about the future and how to direct the effort. Some people were fighting for the right to immigrate only. And some others, if you remember, they were also fighting for the right to be a Jew and learn about your Hebrew language, learn about your Jewish heritage, about your culture, your religion. And it was not even so peaceful. Some people say, like, what do you need it here in the Soviet Union? Let's get out of it. But the truth is, some people who just wanted to get out from the Soviet Union not necessarily knew where to go. Because from Soviet Union, you need to know not only where you're going from, but also where you're going to. So very possible that even here in America now, we need to remember about it and say to ourselves that real aliyah, elevation, does not begin from getting on the plane. It really has to start from someplace before. And that's where your book and your education or educational ideas begin. The real spiritual elevation should lead to the physical one, where people actually transform themselves from United States, let's say, to the Holy Land of Israel. But what should be the step or the first steps that people should make if they hear you right now and say, listen, it was so interesting. People fought for their Jewish identity in Russia when it was forbidden. People were willing to go to jail, risk their lives. And I hear in relative safety, well, if not to mention some left radicals, but I am safe to learn, safe to know, safe to go to Jewish meetings, and I do nothing. So what would be the first step or steps that you would recommend to us?
You know, there are different souls that understand different language and different spiritual chords, I would say. Some people prefer to speak in terms of Jewish peoplehood. Some people prefer to speak in terms of Jewish tradition. In my feeling, both need to work in harmony. But the first thing the person shall ask himself, what sort of a feeling? Is it spiritual void? Is he needs something, he looks for a blessing, he looks who, I mean, he or she, that's one approach. The second approach, if he feels the pain of another Jew just because he is Jewish, it's different things. And start from where your soul is open to hear. Second thing, read indeed our stories. They are important not because they are ours. We've been made the agents of something bigger. It's not important of my personality. It's important to hear the message. I was blessed to bring you the message. Please heed the message. Now start to plan things in a concrete way, not theoretically, not in something vague, I will attend. Plan it practically, sort of a timetable. This month I'm doing that and that for the people of Israel, for myself, a spiritual elevation. And it should end someplace. Sir, in a year's time, I'm taking my suitcase and making Aliyah. Or I'm doing now with Corona, or at least I'm doing some spiritual search. But it should be practical. Do something for the others. People who are seeking to improve their internal satisfaction, first of all, should concentrate on doing for the others. Do for the others, do for their community, do for the state of Israel, do for the Jewish people. But as I mentioned before, first ask your soul what sort of entrance you want to enter.
What an amazing message, because I understand that we can quote Hashem's words to Avram, Lech Lecha, which means also literally go to yourself. In other words, on your search for your path to the land of Israel, because after all, Hashem says to him to go to Israel, it really begins from searching within you and going to yourself. So my blessing to all our listeners that they should find their path to the Holy Land of Israel as part of the search for themselves and hearing the voice, which is an inner voice of themselves. In that regard, your book, The Silent Voice or The Voice of Silence, has a double meaning. We also need not to silence our own inner voices. And we need to hear to the voice of our souls and follow that passion for the search of meaning and purpose, understanding that we are part of something greater than us. That actually helps us to overcome fears and doubts. And your life journey is a proof how you stood up to the KGB. We need to stand up to our daily challenges, and we need to do it again and again every single day. I want to thank you so much for your amazing interview. Wishing you all the best, and I want to tell you and all of us a blessing. Not next year, Ephraim, but rather this year.
This year.
In Jerusalem. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.